Robotics. Just getting us started on some CAD here, and we're going to be talking about the CAD Basics 01 assignment on your desktop AutoCAD app. Hello. For those of you that have downloaded AutoCAD and gotten set up, that's fantastic. I highly recommend this. Is the best way to learn what we're going to do here in CAD this year. And I know some of you are doing the web app as well, and it's okay if you're doing that. Nothing wrong. They both check off my curricular outcomes just fine. So we're going to hop over. We've got AutoCAD already fired up right here, and we are going to be going through the CAD Basics assignment here. Let me just pop over to the lab under the stairs, back to 2.1, the basics. And I'm just going to go and grab the assignment, which is down here, and the drawing I'm going to do today is, okay, so the one that you're supposed to do for 01 is going to be CAD Basics 01 Drawing Lines. It's this one here, okay? I'm not going to give you all the answers to this one, though. I'm going to actually go back, and I'm going to do the pre-2019 version of this assignment. Now, here's the fun part. This assignment, I'm going to zoom in so you can see most of this. This assignment does all the same things as the post-2019 assignment, the one that you're probably supposed to be doing if you're watching this video. And it goes through all of the same tools, it goes through all of the same stuff, but, you know, if you're going to follow along, this is a good way to go because it'll draw everything that you need. That being said, I'm going to move it over to my second screen so that I can see it, and I'm going to show you and give you a little bit of a tour of AutoCAD. So this is AutoCAD, one of the most powerful CAD programs in the world. Absolutely love this program. And when you start yours up, this is the student version I just managed to get set up here, and I'm just going to make sure it's oriented on my screen properly. Yes, it is. You may be looking at a big gray screen as well, depending on which edition you downloaded. This assignment doesn't really care what version you use. You could use 2019. I've done it as early as 2016. Heck, this assignment you could actually do with some of the early versions of AutoCAD from 15 and 20 years ago if you really wanted to. I digress. Download the newest version. Let's work with it, and let's go from there. So what we're going to do to start is we're actually going to go up to our AutoCAD menu, our A button in the top corner here, and we're actually going to start a new drawing. Now, the new drawing we're going to do is going to actually start in AutoCAD format. Your default may jump itself down to AutoCAD ISO. We don't want ISO. ISO is going to make all of your text much larger than you need it to be. So let's go AutoCAD, and here we are. Just as a little bit of a tour, we're going to be floating around two main places here. We're going to be floating around your ribbon at the top, and most of your commands that we're going to use today are actually up here somewhere. Some of them come into little drop-down menus, but for the most part they're all up here. The other thing that we're going to use is the command line, which is this thing at the bottom here. Okay, command line is really useful because it lets you actually type things in that you might need while you're working through AutoCAD. Very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm just going to drop a file here, and I'm going to call it CAD _basics _01. Okay, good example. I'm going to put example in there. Okay, good file names matter because they let you find your stuff really easily. They help you organize your workflow and are just generally wonderful. Let's break down here. The very first thing that we're going to do after we've saved, we have a document. It's where we need it to be. We're pretty much ready to start drawing. The only thing we haven't done yet is we haven't actually set up our layers that we're going to be drawing in. Now, a layer is a preset set of settings that we're going to be able to put a lot of lines, circles, rectangles, whatever inside of, and kind of modify it as a group, which is kind of important. So I'm going to go up to layer properties here. It's going to open up a little window. And this window is where I'm actually going to be able to create two brand new layers. You'll notice that you can drag your windows around. You can also actually pin them to the side of your screen if you want to. I don't really want to do that with layers, but you could do it if you wanted to, if you use layers quite frequently. I'm going to click this little button here with the orange star on it, and it is going to allow me to create a new layer. I like my first layer to be called drawing, and I like my second layer to be called dimensioning. Now, in a proper drawing, if you were doing this with a mechanical model, architectural model, you'd have many, many layers. But for our drawing, because we're just learning the ropes of this, we just need two, so life is good. I'm going to give them both a unique color, and I'm not going to mess with any of the other settings. Okay, some of these settings will do things like freeze the layer, they'll do things like make it so it doesn't print in your final product. Touching any of these for this assignment is going to make your life not so pleasant. So I would just leave them. I like closing this down. Now up in my layers menu I can see that I can now select those layers I created. And I really want to start in the drawing layer. I've made it a very nice bright yellow for you to get started with. Now when we look at our drawing we realize that the very first point that we know about is the very first object is the rectangle that is the border. Now I could go up here to my rectangle button up at the top, and the nice thing in AutoCAD is it says do you want to create a rectangle, and it pops up a little kind of help menu that says do you want to draw a rectangle from this point to this point. And, you know, maybe I do. But right now, I'm going to use what's called hybrid data entry. I have my left hand on the keyboard, I have my right hand on the mouse here, so I'm going to make use of that. I'm actually going to type in rectangle and start typing it on my keyboard. And what AutoCAD is going to do is it's going to ask, do you mean to draw a rectangle? Well, in fact, I do. I could either click here or I could press enter. Enter works well. Now this is where this gets cool. The command line is actually going to ask us now, do you want to specify a corner point? What is it? And I do. Because I know that this rectangle exists, it starts in the bottom left corner at 0, 0, at the origin of our drawing. Now as I'm moving around this page, I'm pushing the mouse wheel in, so you can see that I'm panning around. If I scroll the mouse wheel in, I can go in and outwards as well. One of the very common things I see with students is they end up getting their drawing started somewhere about here, and they actually draw the next page, the next parts. They go 10, 7, and they draw the next part of the rectangle. And often what they'll do is they'll come to me and say, hey, Mr. Way, I typed the thing in right, and I can't see my rectangle. And I'll walk up to their computer, and I'll zoom in, and I'll zoom in, and I'll zoom in, and I'll zoom in, and be like, well, it was there, but you couldn't see it. All right, now we've got a rectangle that we can actually, you know, work with for the most part, and we can get started on a few things. So now in our drawing, we've got a line that I'm going to use the pre-2019 version that actually sits down here in the bottom left. Now the coordinates and the numbers in this are going to be slightly different if you're doing the post-2019 version, but the concept is there. Okay. I went up and I can click on my line tool because I want to draw a line, and it says specify first point. So in this case I've got point 2, 2, that's our starting point, and you'll notice that it now locks that end of that line to that point I just typed in. Now this one has a very specific length. The one in the post-2019 version has a different length. I'm going to type it in, and then I'm going to press the Tab key on my keyboard. Tab is going to switch from taking a length dimension to taking an angular dimension. Now you'll notice that the angular dimension is measured where 0 is 3 o'clock on the clock, straight to the right hand side. And everything past it is just an angle thereof. So you could go from 0 to 180, and then if you drag it in the negative direction, you can go 0 to 180 as well. In this case, our version on the drawing I'm making is 45. So I'm going to type that in, and we're going to have our line right here that we can, you know, start with. I'm going to dimension it right away because it makes sense to dimension some pieces of this. So I'm going to go to my dimensioning layer, and I'm going to go play around with my dimensioning menu. Now there's a little drop down that talks about different kinds of dimensions. We have linear, aligned, and angular, which is what we're going to play with right now. So let's start with linear. Linear is relatively easy. We're going to click from side to side on this frame and actually put this here. One cool trick in AutoCAD is if I hit the Enter key, I can actually do the last command that I put into my into AutoCAD. So you're gonna hear me clicking a lot here. That's me hitting Enter because I'm just doing the same command over and over again. Now linear commands are great, linear dimensions are great, but when it comes to this line, when I put a linear dimension on here, this is supposed to be 2.8284 long, but I actually get the number 2. And that's not quite what I was looking for. What I've done is I've put a linear dimension. It's aligned it to the x-axis or the y-axis. I can put these in y as well. What I actually wanted was an aligned dimension. So I'm going to click on align and I'm going to show you the difference. Aligned dimensions are going to allow me to align the dimensioning, the measurement, to that line itself. So instead of going here, we end up getting something aligned, and life is generally good. That being said, I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to select it and I'm going to press delete. Now, there was an angle also on here, and I'm just going to grab this and drag it out a little bit so we have some space to work. And that angle is done in a very unique way. I'm just going to put a line, and I'm going to snap it to the orthogonal snap. There's actually a little green dashed line here that is snapping to 90 degrees, or 0 degrees. I could also do 90 degrees, depends how my AutoCAD is set up. I don't really care how long that line is, because all I'm going to be using it for is to snap an angular dimension between this line and this line. And in this case, that angular dimension is 45. I think it's 30 if you're doing the assignment proper. I'm just going to move my dimension back in place. One thing I really like to do is, I grab the whole dimension, not just the number. I like it so that in my drawings, the dimensions don't cross as best we can. And this is something that you're going to try to do to make it very clear as to what's what, because as soon as you get into the area where, you know, things are looking like this, it just generally becomes a mess. So, you know, be clean with your dimensions. I'm going to throw a couple more dimensions on using a command called leader, okay, L-E-A-D-E-R, okay, because right here, there's supposed to be a piece, click, click, and then I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to type 2, 2, and then I'm going to press enter twice. There we go. We got some numbers. I'm going to press enter to do that command again because I've got a leader down here that I have in the drawing that I want it to be 0, 0. I press enter, 0, 0, enter, enter. There's my 0, 0. That's my origin. Nice. Those are our leaders. Now, there are ways of doing some pieces of that automatically in an Autodesk drawing, but just to learn the program, this is probably a pretty good way to do this thing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and draw the big rectangle that's in the middle. I'm not going to make the entire drawing, by the way. I'm just going to make sure you have all the tools to do what you need to do. We do have a rectangle here that starts at 5, 1, and unknown command, rectangle. There we go. Starts at 5, 1, and it goes for 1.5 units in the X direction, comma 5 units in the Y direction. There we go. We got that thing. Okay. Now, putting the dimensions on this, again, super easy. We're going to put our linear dimensions on it because they are easy. There, there, enter, there, there. Oh, we put these ones at the top in this drawing. Now, exactly where dimensions and stuff goes, not really important to me. Putting a leader on here. I just want to make sure that you have all of the dimensions on the drawing so that it is a complete drawing. So exactly where the dimensions go, not terribly important. Now, one thing that you may notice here is that some of these dimensions I've put on here have the wrong number of zeros on them based on the drawings. And that's something that you can fix. If I click on these linear dimensions, I can actually go right click and I can change their precision level. I can put them to 1 decimal place, which is kind of what I want to do. But if I want to be really lazy about it, I can actually click on them and I can right click and go down to this button here called Select Similar. That's going to select all of the linear dimensions in my drawing, and I can change all of their decimal places, which is super neat. 2 more things. Let's draw a circle, and let's draw one more line, and it's a tricky line. Okay, we're going to do the circle, and we know that our circle starts in this drawing at 8.5, comma, 5.5. There you go. Okay, and it has a radius of 0.75. Now, if I wanted to draw a diameter, you'll notice that at the bottom of my command line, I actually have the option to just type in or press diameter. I'm going to draw that in, and I'm going to realize that, hey, I put this in the wrong layer. That sucks. I'm actually going to go select this, and you'll notice I'm selecting from right to left. I get this little green lasso here. And I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to actually go and change its layer by just clicking on this menu and moving it into the correct layer. When I press escape to go back to normal, you'll actually see that it kind of goes back to whatever my layer was beforehand. And so I actually want a dimension right now, so it's kind of a good thing, but just be aware of that. And jump that up to 7.5. I'm going to change the precision level to 1 decimal place. Hey, that didn't work. It rounded the 0.75 to 8. That's probably not the precision level I want. Let's fix it. All right, now I got most of this drawing done. There's one more line here that is somewhat tricky that we need to deal with, and that's the line in the bottom right. And it's really weird in that in this drawing, it actually has some very, very specific numbers on it. And when I actually type those numbers in, I'm actually going to go demo this as many of you will the first time and tell you why and how it's wrong. Okay, the very first point we have is 7.3. I'm going to round these numbers a little bit just for the sake of time. 7.3 and 2. And then the second number I have is 9.2 and 1.2. So I'm actually going to type those numbers in. 9.2 and 1.2. And what happens is I get this really weird line that goes off into the right, off into the middle of nowhere. Now, what actually happened is when I typed those numbers in, it actually did the numbers correctly. If I put a linear dimension on this, I actually get a line that was 9.2 long and that's 1.2 high. So I kind of got what I wanted, but it's not what I wanted. I was actually trying to send the dimensions to those points. And in doing so, I needed to use something called an absolute coordinate. When I typed in those numbers, it drew that next line relative to where the first point of the line was. What I actually wanted to do is I actually wanted to draw the second point of the line in relation to the origin, 0.0. To do that, I'm going to use the number sign. Okay, and the number sign here is going to let me do something like this. And let's just go through this one more time quickly. Let's go to our line tool. There we go. Okay, 7.3. Again, I'm rounding on this one. 2. And then we're going to draw the next point here at number sign. Okay, so absolute value, 9.2. comma 1.2. What you're going to see is it's going to draw that line. Ooh, it drew that line in a very, very weird direction. I'm going to go see what happened here. I'm going to type in properties. Okay, I'm going to go see the properties of this line. Now, when you type in properties, you get this little menu that gives you all sorts of information about the thing you're currently clicking on. I often CAD with this sitting right here beside me. And I'm going to just see what happened here. The end of X 9.2, the end of X 1.2. I'm looking at this because my, oh, I put 2.2. That's why. I had a typo. Let's type in 1.2 and see what happens to that line. Look, hey, it moved. I changed its properties. You can, by the way, do this for all sorts of things. If your circle has the wrong radius on it, and you suddenly need this circle to have a radius of, let's say the radius is now 1, okay, you can absolutely just change that. And you'll notice that a lot of the dimensions will also change too on these ones. Now, you're going to go ahead and put the text tool. I haven't quite finished this drawing, but it's, you know, it's close enough for me to demo the last piece, which is how to present this. Okay, put your name, put your assignment number on it. I really don't care what layer that's in. Could be the dimension layer. Nothing wrong with that. Put it somewhere in the drawing. Doesn't exactly matter where. We're going to talk about title blocks a little bit later on in this module, but for right now, just throw your name on the drawing somewhere. And we're going to present this. Now, one weird thing happens. If I go to present this as a PDF right now and just go export PDF, I'm going to get what can best be described as a mess. I'm going to put it in my documents folder, and I'm actually going to go ahead and pull it up here. Just a moment. From documents folder, that's CAD examples. Hang tight one moment. Let's get what we need. There we go. All right, let's take a look at this thing. What I got here is a bit of a hot mess. Two things are going on here. The first is that I can't see anything. That's not a good thing. All of the lines are the wrong colors. They're too light. I can fix that relatively easily using layers. But the other thing is it's not centered on the page. It's not presented in a way that's useful to me really at all. So let's fix all of that. The first thing I'm going to do is go to the bottom left here, and I'm going to go to my layout view. Now this is the layout of what I'm actually going to use, or what would be called paper space, where I'm actually going to present my drawing for AutoCAD. I'm going to double click here, and the very first thing I'm going to do, because I can't see anything in here, is go up to my layers here. Okay. Now right now my layers are bright yellow and bright blue. I'm just going to make them about 3 shades darker, and what you're going to see is that suddenly I can see everything. There we go. For all intents and purposes, those are the same colors, and life is good. The next thing I'm going to do, and by the way, if you've double-clicked outside of this square, you're going to get a slightly different set of tools than if you've double-clicked inside this square. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click this button at the bottom called Grid Mode, or I could type in Grid Mode, and I'm just going to make the grid go away. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my Zoom menu on the right here, and I'm going to use a button here called Zoom Extents. Zoom Extents is going to zoom in on what I have drawn, and it's going to put it right in the middle of my page. Now that is the thing that I actually want to see presented. This nice white paper page where we've got all the drawings, everything is nicely formatted and ready for presentation. Watch the difference. I'm going to go export here as a PDF, and I'm going to save it over top of the old file because, you know, the old file was wrong. And we're going to turn around and go open it up again and see what happens. Now what we've got here is a drawing that is pretty much exactly what I want. And PDF is great. Portable document format, shows up the same on every platform ever, and for the sake of this class, it also shows up in your ePortfolio in a way that's really easy to see, really easy to work with. Don't worry about the Autodesk student version. Yours may show this, it may not show that. It's kind of irrelevant. You are learning, that's the point of this project, and that's something that you can actually do to, I guess, put this drawing together. With that being said, here's a few of the tools that you've used today, and we'll touch base in a future video here about the next couple of assignments, because there should be 4 of these CAD Basics assignments that you're finishing for the sake of this class. Cheers, stay safe.